Everybody, I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 10th Planning Commission meeting. It is now 6:01. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And if we can do a roll call, please. Madam. Okay, I'll do that, please.
Here. Commissioner Mattingly. I'm noting the absence of Commissioner Santos. Also Commissioner Steinbach, who I believe let me know last time he wouldn't be here this time. Commissioner Stevens. Here. Vice Chair Graff. Here. And Chair Camerata.
We are here. And we will now do a flag salute. If we can have that done by Vice Chair Graff, please.
Put your hand over your heart. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir. Okay, item number 2, oral communications. Persons wishing to speak or address the Planning Commission on subjects other than those scheduled are requested to do so at this time. Please provide your name and address for the record. In order to conduct a timely meeting, a 3-minute limit per person has been established. Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have any cards or anybody requesting to speak?
Yes, we do. We have 2 speakers. We have George Kivett and someone who would like to speak on an item but will not be here by then to speak on it.
Okay.
And I don't know her name.
Okay. So if you want to bring Mr. Kivett up, we can.
Sure.
Hello, Mr. Kivett. Good evening.
Good evening. George Kivett, longtime Lomita resident. Thanks for the time here, Chairman Camerata and the Commission. Got 2 concerns I wanted to express this evening in regards to our friendly city here. One of them, I've spoke to the City Council. I've left messages with management, and I've spoke with other management here about it. But it has to do with the city sidewalk where it crosses the driveway to the county yard at 24309 Walnut. And as some of you may have noted, anybody that had walked by there, especially if you had any type of mobility issues, there are no curb cuts at that location. And it's immediately adjacent to our city park, just feet away from the park. So anybody coming on Walnut from the north side of Lomita, trying to get to the park, if they have any type of mobility issues, they wouldn't be able to access the Lomita Park without going into the street at Callison. And I've got my wheeled measuring device out, and I've measured the distance. I walked it several times just to be sure it's calibrated right and so forth. They would have to be, and this is if there was at least 1 car parked along the street there. It would be a total of a minimum of 310 feet that they would have to travel within the street from the corner at Callison until they reached the city yard, the driveway to the city yard immediately adjacent to the park.
Okay.
I've tried, I live close to the park. A week or so back, I tried to get my father to the park. He's going to be 90 shortly. He now uses a walker. He didn't feel comfortable to cross over that point, and I wasn't going to take him into the street. So we turned back and went home. The other day, I saw somebody on a knee scooter with a dog, and they had a great difficulty getting across that section. But it's a measured distance, 310 feet, and when I was measuring it, there were other cars, coming along the street. They had to literally move to the other side of the street to pass me walking in the street because of trying to get around cars there. And I'm telling everybody that I know, I've left messages. I left another message today for Carla that I want an answer on what the city is going to do to address this, because it's a very important issue. One other thing, if I know, hopefully I'm not out of time, but I'd like you all to watch the tape of the last meeting, the last Planning Commission meeting. I think there were some errors in how the public, there was one agenda item that was of some controversy. And if you watch it, there's a half-hour period. I looked at the timing on the thing, on the video, where there was extensive discussion among the commissioners before opening the public hearing. I talked to the city attorney at the last city council meeting, and he said that's the type of thing that could put the city in a position of liability, especially if there was a lawsuit. But watch it. It'd be a good learning
Are
experience
you
for
referring to
you.
the last city council meeting, though?
Well, I'm talking about the last planning commission meeting. There was one item about the office building on Pacific Coast Highway. You didn't open the public hearing. You called the applicant up multiple times, and there was discussion for a half hour among the commissioners. There were some questions to the staff, but you were discussing it for a half hour among yourself, discussing different options, possible fines, and what have you. And it could put the city in a position of liability, especially if there were a lawsuit. I talked to the city attorney about that at the last city council meeting. But please watch that. It'd be a good learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kivett. Okay, next. Okay.
Hi, my name is Rachel Marinus. My address is 12560 Sanford in Los Angeles, 90066, but I'm here representing the new restaurant across the street at 24503 Narbonne. And thank you for allowing me to speak before the agenda item. I just learned about it, and I'm sorry that I'm unable to stay through the entire meeting. We just learned that the Planning Commission is considering approving murals on the side of buildings, and the new restaurant there, the Slip, would like to say that we strongly support that. We'd love to put a mural depicting Lomita history or something nice about Lomita on the south-facing wall of our building. We don't have any preconceived ideas, but this is just beginning to think about it, but we'd love to learn how to be able to do that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Seeing no further speakers, we can now go to the consent agenda, item number 3. And the first item, 3A, is approval of the June 12th, 2023 minutes. If I can get a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Okay, there's a motion. Anybody want a second? I'll second. Okay, Brenda, second. Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Okay. Okay, item number 4. Public hearings. First is 4A, conditional use permit number 325 at 1943 Pacific Coast Highway within the commercial retail zone, and finding that the action is to be exempt from California Environmental Quality Act. The applicant is Fernanda Lopez on behalf of Q Bowl Tacos and Beer, 1943 Pacific Coast Highway in Lomita, and the presentation will be done by planning intern Weisberg. And I believe we have a presentation. We do? Okay, and welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight I will be presenting on CUP number 325, which is located at 1943 Pacific Coast Highway. Some background: our applicant is Fernanda Lopez for Que Bole Tacos and Beer. They again are applying for CUP number 325 for beer and wine sales for on-site consumption at 1943 Pacific Coast Highway. This restaurant is already a bona fide eating establishment for the past year and a half, and before that it also was a restaurant use. The restaurant is located in the northern middle section of the Lomita Village Shopping Center, which is comprised of 3 multi-tenant buildings on around a 90,000 square foot lot. As you can see on this slide in Exhibit B, the project site is located around the center of Lomita, along Pacific Coast Highway and Eshelman, which are 2 major thoroughfares within the city. As you can see in Exhibit E, the project site has the 3 multi-tenant buildings located in the corners of the lot with a large parking area in the center, as well as some parking area in the rear of the lot. There are 2 exits off onto Pacific Coast Highway, as well as Eshelman, as you can see on this map. The general plan designation for K-Bole is commercial with commercial uses. The adjacent land uses are residential as well as commercial. Similarly, our zoning is commercial retail, with adjacent zones being commercial general as well as residential. This slide indicates the facade of K-Bole Tacos and Beer from the front, and then some context in that photo on the right for other establishments within the lot. You'll notice that looking west, you can see some of the other businesses within the shopping center, as well as the western exit, which exits onto Eshelman Avenue. And looking east, you'll see that there is circulation to other businesses within the shopping center, as well as parking options. The last multi-tenant building, which is on the corner of PCH and Eshelman Avenue, features some of the other businesses within the shopping center, and almost directly outside of the doors of the restaurant, you will see the southern exit, which is off onto Pacific Coast Highway. The trash enclosures for the shopping center are located in the rear. They are fully enclosed to provide minimal disturbances to the neighboring residential properties. The floor plan, as you can see on this slide, indicates that the restaurant has a full kitchen, as would any bona fide eating establishment, as well as a beverage cooler located near the place of service, so that the workers will have full surveillance over the area, as well as this floor plan features the dining area, which seats about 20 people, so it is a fairly small restaurant comprising only about 1,000 square feet. You'll also notice that there are no exits in the rear, which would be residential, and so there would be minimal disturbances to the neighbors, because the only entrance is out into the shopping center. So again, CUP 325 is to allow the existing restaurant, which has been around for about 1.5 years, to serve beer and wine for on-site consumption. Their current hours are from 9:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. Next is the findings required for the CUP. So first off is that it must be permitted within the zone, which in this case is the CR zone, in which alcohol is permitted. The other finding is that there should not be a sensitive use within 300 feet of the establishment. In this case, there are sensitive uses. However, given that there is a 6-foot block wall of separation, as well as the fact that the walking distance is about 2.2 miles or over 1,000 feet via the available pathways of travel, staff has found that this should not cause disturbances to the neighboring properties. This CUP would also create additional dine-in options for residents and visitors, which is a major goal within Lomita to support our businesses. The parking that is available will be able to accommodate the intensified use. This use, again, was already a restaurant, and they're just adding on to their menu. So this should not intensify the use enough to require additional parking. Finally, there is sufficient circulation in and out of the shopping center, as indicated in the photos as well as the map. There is an exit off onto PCH as well as Eshelman Avenue. Planning has set conditions of approval, the first being that crimes shall be reported to LASD upon their occurrence. The restaurant may operate from 9:30 a.m. And shall close by 10 p.m. every single day, so Monday through Thursday, which is similar to other restaurants that are located within the shopping center. And finally, trash shall be deposited in the dumpsters no more than 30 minutes after closing. This is to make sure that there are limited disturbances to the nearby residents. And with that, I will lay out your options. The first being to approve the resolution as recommended. The second being to approve the resolution with amended conditions, to deny the application, or finally, to provide staff with further direction. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Monica?
No.
Brenda?
No.
Mike?
Yes, is it the intention that, I know on most of these that we do, excuse me, the cups that we do, that the kitchen must be open during the hours that alcohol is served? Is that the intention on this?
Yes, the kitchen will be open during the operation of alcohol, sale of alcohol.
I think it should be so stated that, I mean, right now, what if they decided they wanted to close the kitchen at 6 o'clock and still serve? Their approval says till 10 o'clock. I think that what we've done is we've done that in the past on the cups that the kitchen has to be open while alcohol is being served.
Yeah, you could always make that an additional condition of approval in your motion. They are also still subject to the requirements of their ABC license they'd be obtaining as well.
Thank you.
Jay, any questions? Okay, is the applicant here? She'd like to come up and introduce herself and give her presentation, please.
Hi, my name is Fernanda Lopez. I am the owner of Gubole Tacos and Beer on 1943 PCH.
Do you want to make the presentation or?
Yeah, I was told that I just could talk a little bit about the restaurant and kind of like where it started and all that. So it is family recipes. I was born in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, so a lot of the food is regionally specific to that area. We serve Mexican-style seafood, or mariscos. They are mostly recipes from my mother and grandmother and so on and so forth. We've been operating under the Gubole Tacos and Beer DBA, even though it was previously a restaurant, for a little bit over 1.5 years at this point. We find that a lot of the customers consistently ask us for beer with their mariscos because it just goes hand in hand. And especially with the summer, and we find like California heat is just perfect for that. So it would be a really great opportunity for us to have that and bring in more revenue for our business and for the city and all that.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
let's go ahead and open up the public hearing portion. Anybody that would wish to speak on this, Linda, or is there anybody on, I don't know if anybody's online, actually.
George Kivett would like to speak.
Okay. Well, welcome back, Mr. Kivett, to the podium.
Thank you again, Chair Camarada and members of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to mention real quickly that, and I think she's the intern, that was an exceptional presentation, I thought. Very smooth, complete, and that was very good. That'd be somebody to definitely hire in the future, full-time. But anyway, I like the idea that Commissioner Graff had mentioned that it is stated in the CUP that the kitchen to remain open during business hours. I think that's just a natural. It should be, and I'm not going to say which establishment, but I did call a restaurant in town recently because I'd heard they serve something special that it's on one of my favorites list. But I called, and their kitchen was very limited. They were only serving one item out of the kitchen, out of their total menu, and this was during the week. But I'm not going to say who. But I like the idea that they are to remain open during business hours. I do like the idea, and I don't know if I've heard this before, where the trash to be deposited, within a reasonable time. I think it was 10:30, especially if they are serving, beer and wine, beer bottles, what have you, may make a little clanking noise, dropping them into the dumpster. And I think that's a very reasonable item on that. And I'm very much in favor of the beer and wine to be, approved as far as their CUP. And I think it'd be very, very complimentary to their food service. I do have experience as a real estate broker with food service type businesses, including several here in Lomita, where we have acquired, ABC licensing and so forth. And I think it'll be very complimentary and it'll help the business. There's more than adequate parking within the location there. I've been into that shopping center numerous times, and there's good ingress, egress, so forth. And I think it'd just be a win-win. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kivett. With that being said, no one else, Linda?
No?
And no one online. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. If anybody has any last comments or questions, and if not, then we'll take a vote on it. Monica, anything?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it part of the ABC thing they have to have food while they serve drinks? Did I hear that correctly? So to us to add it would be redundant because it's already in with the state, okay. Which would come down on them much harder than we would, okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yeah, I just checked the ABC website, and they have to be a bona fide public eating place, and so they have to serve meals along with the alcohol. Right. But of course, if it's within the course, the commission can add that condition as well.
Does it have to be a full menu during those hours, like especially in the evening is where most people are concerned?
It just, what the state requires, if I'm reading correctly, they have to have suitable kitchen facilities and supply an assortment of food.
Okay. So it'd be more than one item that they would be.
Yeah, assortment of food, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Brenda?
I have nothing.
Okay. Mike?
Thank you, Monica. You did it.
Jay? Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions, let's take a vote on the conditional use permit number 325. Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mike will make a motion. Second?
I'll second.
Monica, second. Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Was not with any added conditions, correct?
No, that's correct.
And just a point of clarification, the public hearing is now closed.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We're going to go to public hearing number 4B, which is going to be discussion and consideration of a zone text amendment number 2023-07, ordinance amending the Lomita Municipal Code Title 11, which is the planning and zoning, to update the mixed-use overlay district regulations and allow mixed-use developments containing 4 or fewer units within the downtown commercial or DC zone, and recommend that the action be found exempt from California Environmental Quality Act or CEQA. The presentation is by Associate Planner Laura McMorrin. Laura, do you have a report for us?
Thank you, Chair Camerata. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. So, little background on this. In 2006, the city adopted its mixed-use overlay zoning. It established a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, and that was because mixed use and in fostering redevelopment needed to consolidate lots. The city has a range of lot sizes in its commercial districts as small as 3,000 square feet and on up to 20, 30,000 square feet, but the most are on smaller size, especially in the DC zone. So lot mergers in the projects that have occurred since 2006 have been rather limited, or projects that have included 2 lots. And one of the reasons for that is acquiring an adjacent property is really beyond, first of all, the city's control or the developer's control. In the 2 instances where we've had multiple lots, they have been sold by the same entity to the developer. So the co-applicant owns a 6,900 square foot commercial lot in the mixed-use downtown commercial zone, and it contains 2-story building that is approximately 7,500 square feet. This building was built over 80 years ago, and it's effectively landlocked. On the north is a city-owned property, and this, again, I want to be clear, this amendment is not specific to just this property, but to any downtown commercial property with the mixed-use overlay. So, but I'll give you their conditions, and because they're somewhat typical of others. They have one use on one side and another on another, and nowhere to expand. They're, in a sense, landlocked. Just a kind of fast jog down memory lane. These are the projects that occurred post the mixed use. Here we have the 8 units across, the 8 residential units, 2 commercial across from the post office. This is one south of 250th, and its residential is on 250th. Here we have on Narbonne Avenue, and then there's 16 units behind it here in the DC zone. This is the only DC zone project that has over 10,000 square feet, only DC zone mixed use project. And this was the most recent project that received a certificate of occupancy just south of 248th and Narbonne. Again, this is in the CG zone. So the general plan land use is commercial with a mixed use. What you're seeing is the zoning map, and that is just for the DC, that aqua blue, light blue area, and the hatched area with the mixed use overlay. So now, pre-2006, actually, I think all of these are pre-1964 or earlier. These are existing DC mixed-use properties. They'd be considered non-conforming by today's standards. Most have less than a 10,000 square foot lot size. They're small in scale. They have a historic character about them. There's a qualitative difference in them because of their age and when they were built than what the other post-2006 properties are like. This is the applicant's property. As mentioned, it's 6,900 square feet. It has 2 stories, or the lot size is 6,900 square feet. It has 2 stories. It is almost built lot line to lot line. The use is presently commercial. There is no parking on this. It has a rear yard setback of just under 10 feet, but the rear is, it's non-active. It's pretty much just like a access for a fire individual, someone from the fire department to gain access. And the building, you know, other than that rear yard space, doesn't have any true usable open space. So what we're proposing compared to the existing standards, there are nuances, differences to account in some ways for the size, but much is the same. First and foremost, the housing element calls for the density of 20 to 30 units an acre. That's what this will be. No change in this. The maximum number of units in our existing development standards, the maximum is the density. They can get what they get. In this provision, we're looking at a maximum number of units of 4. And I'll get into kind of the rationale for that later. The minimum lot size in the existing is 10,000, and here there would be no minimum lot size. If the lot is a developable lot and it is zoned for mixed use in the DC zone, then it would be eligible. Unit sizes. In the current code, we have minimum sizes, no maximum. In the proposed code, we're going to have something a little bit more subtle, more refined, which is a maximum average size. And that is because there's only a certain volume of space. When you have an FAR of 2 to 1, floor area ratio of 2 to 1, how you carve up that space between commercial and residential is needs some parameters. And if you can go virtually unlimited on the residential, then what does that do to the commercial? So this is trying to bring some balance in. The average size that has been proposed is larger than the minimum in our code. So we are not trying to shortchange or overly curtail anyone in this and creating a comfortable unit, but just not excessively large units for small spaces. And again, when you go with density, unless you get height, you're not going to be able to, there's just parameters to things. So we'd like to introduce that standard. Ground floor, very much similar. The existing has 50% windows. It requires recessed entries for 50% of the frontage. We're keeping that same standard, and we're also adding no residential uses except for ingress and egress. We want to have a commercial active in our DC right on the street. The affordable units, right now a project in the existing mixed-use overlay is, if they opt for it, are eligible for California's density bonus law. The minimum threshold for that is 5 units. Okay. And what we are proposing is our own version of that law with the essential elements, but not all the flourishes that the state density bonus law provides. And this gives the developer some tools that are available to other projects that they would be precluded from having. So I'm going to give you like a comparison of the two. So with the state's law, you get additional units, plus they get to round for even the smallest fraction to the next unit. We're not proposing that. We think our density is our density. That's what the housing element has set. So leave it at that because that's what the city has planned for. So what I have here is the state gives incentives and concessions from development standards and based on the percentage of units. We're doing it a little differently and based on the number of units, because percentages at this point, when you're talking 2, 3, 4 units, they're going to be much greater than what the state requires anyway. The state has something called unlimited waivers, and we're not allowing waivers. And then the term is equivalent, 30 years, that this is deed restricted, low-income housing.
Just real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is, where you're headed here is because it is less than the minimum for what the state is, 5 units. So with 4 units, we can do what we want to do. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for asking that question and getting clarification. So this zone text amendment, it is clearly consistent with the land use designation. This is still a mixed use designated commercial zone. This is also consistent with Housing Element Policy 2.4, which is to promote creativity in housing development through regulations. And this is kind of like a regulation adjustment. We have a 10,000 square foot lot minimum, which precludes a number of properties from adding residential, but they are zoned for it and the land use is designated for it. And then it also is consistent or advances Program 7, which is to evaluate an incentive approach to facilitate development to lower income households. There are a few other changes, more like reconciliations, I guess I would call them. We already have a provision in the existing code for corner lots. This has to pertain to sight lines. We've added a definition on what that means because always have definitions. It's just if there's something in the code that isn't defined, we need to define it. And it's going to apply to both the existing and to the proposed. We have to have objective standards, and what we have in the existing code is case by case. State law doesn't like you doing that anymore. So, and it's okay. We can add some quantitative numbers to it, and it makes sense. Entitlement. Under the current development standards, we say that any of them can be waived with or modified with a CUP. The practice in planning is that CUPs are for uses. To change a development standard is through a variance or through a modification. That is the proper entitlement procedure. And so what we've done is we have modified that provision and we've applied it to the mix of uses, the 30% commercial, 70% residential, because that is a use-based question still. And we've also noted that in our housing element. And then we've updated the provision on covered and uncovered parking to be consistent with section 11-166 in our municipal code. So they can have either option. So the commission has multiple options tonight, which is to vote for the resolution, which would be to recommend approval of the ordinance, vote against the resolution, which is recommending rejection. And then the last is to recommend the draft ordinance with changes. So with that said, are there questions?
Okay, thank you, Laura. And yes, are there any questions? Monica?
No.
Brenda?
Yeah, just for clarification. So a lot that's landlocked, basically, and it's under 10,000 square feet, it's not big enough for mixed use. I mean, you can't have commercial frontage and residential if there's no place for any parking or, you don't have to have parking, I know. But you do. I mean, you can't just have business and residential with street parking only in the middle of our downtown area, correct?
I'm not sure I understand. If I don't answer the question properly, maybe you could restate it. So let's, for example, take the applicant's property. It still has to come to the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit should this ordinance pass. The development standards would be separate from that if they opted for an affordable option, but they don't have any parking today. They're never, unless that building is demolished, they're never going to get parking. And so, what was I saying? The provision for the affordable unit is because, and the incentive and concession is because a public good is being created, something that helps the city achieve its RHNA numbers. Particularly where we fell short was in low income and very low income housing. So while this particular property and possibly others has space but does not have off-site parking, they would be allowed, like others, to show that they're within proximity of a public parking lot. We have that provision already in our municipal code, and we can waive that requirement. We have decreased the parking requirement for a number of businesses in the DC zone to for their use's intensity, right? Because they're more than, say, 1 to 300. This business or this property is also within proximity of a public parking lot. Same within that distance as are others. The option is, does it stay all commercial as is, or is it allowed to fulfill the mixed use intent of the area? And the only hang up right now is lot size. The development standards are a hang up for sure. But lot size is the basic minimum. You could vary the other development standards if you so chose.
So there is no residential at that property. It's currently straight commercial property.
None. The upstairs is, it's right now, the applicant can speak to it. They had been looking to lease it for office use and had limited interest.
Okay, I just was trying to get some clarification because I know there's other properties that are kind of in that same boat. And I just think that giving a leeway of 4 units on a 10,000 foot lot is a lot. I mean, and I just wanted to be clear on that whole thing.
I can jump in too as well. Just fill in just 2 extra things is that it is not saying that none of these are required to have that parking, like anyone who applies. It's just saying there's the incentive of the idea of having affordable housing and alternate modes of transportation that people might not have vehicles, in addition to hours of operation of businesses versus times when people are parked at home.
Okay. Mike, any questions?
Yeah, taking that a step further, if they wanted to, if they could, keep the lower level all commercial, except for, of course, the access upstairs, going upstairs, and put in units upstairs, they wouldn't be required to have any parking whatsoever But I thought, doesn't our public parking, isn't it limited by hours?
Well,
You can't
under the,
park there all
under the provision that has been, under the ordinance as drafted, they are required, however, they can get a concession, like the density bonus law, from a development standard. And so, it's basically like a menu. Development standards are you have a number of them. And what ones they qualify for or meet, or what ones a project doesn't meet. So if a project doesn't meet 3 of our development standards, let's just say, it would have to provide 2 affordable units. And, it's really tough to, we're trying to deal with the reality of what we have existing and the ideal. And that reconciliation, and also then what is imposed upon us to perform.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. So if they were to have 2 affordable units, that means the requirement for parking goes away.
If they so select, but yes,
Yeah,
I'm going to be,
Then where would the vehicles park? Because the public parking would have to be the street, because aren't our parking lots limited by hour? And that one down there by burning daylight?
they are, it's like a 2-hour time zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then what would happen? Are they excluded from that? So you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, yeah. They would have to find
curious.
street parking somewhere that was unrestricted. And that street parking, whether it be on 242nd or Aileen, belongs as much to a resident,
2 blocks away.
2 blocks away as it belongs to anyone wanting to use it. So that would be their challenge, or, there is a corollary between one's income and vehicle ownership. And there's also a corollary between unit size, kind of one of the reasons we put this parameter on maximum unit size or average maximum unit size, and the cost of a unit. And so while we cannot guarantee, we can say the probability is higher that an affordable unit and a smaller unit will have someone who's less likely to own a vehicle. Right? No guarantees there, but it's possible. That's the probability.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Jay, any questions?
Just one question, and thank you, by the way, Laura, for the presentation. You mentioned waivers and how typically there are unlimited waivers, but in this case we're doing no waivers. What is a waiver? Can you just clarify what that is and why we aren't allowing any?
Sure. So a waiver in state density bonus law is is basically once you've maxed out on your incentives and concessions, a developer could say, I still can't afford to do the project if I don't get this standard waived. So, we have a limited menu. Some cities have a lot more items in their laundry list or on their a la carte plan. And so they could say, I can't afford to do it. It used to be that cities would make them kind of do a pro forma to show that there was really a financial impact on them creating the unit for, there's like, a nexus there between the waiver they're seeking and the performance to get that unit. However, my understanding, and I'm going to defer to counsel, is that court cases have basically said, yeah, we're not going to be that strict on showing your pro forma. Is that fair?
Yes.
Short answer.
So the waiver is basically anything they want, almost, not, but we're saying no. And we can because this is our own affordable incentive program.
And we've seen that happen already.
We have had a project, it didn't have a waiver. They worked with our concessions and incentives, and they worked hard to provide, most of the parking, but they did get incentives. It's a bigger project, right? And so we're trying to give, kind of even the playing field a little bit, and not just go for new development all the time. I, again, want to emphasize, I think the character of the downtown and its charm is somewhat in its scale. And so if we realize consolidation, which again has not been, lot consolidation has not been really fruitful, really embraced, it's not been the hot potato, right? It's not been the hottest thing. It's been hard to do. But if it was realized, what would that change and how would that look? And so we're putting something down special for the DC, mixed use overlay, and giving an opportunity. And as you can, I just want to, go back. It exists. It exists in all these properties in the DC zone already. So that is, okay, are there any more questions?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But that's good. Okay, so let's go, is there a applicant here present for this, by any chance? If you would be kind enough to come up to the podium and state your name for the record, and you can give your presentation.
Okay, well, good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Luis de Moraes. I'm the architect. My company is Envirotechno Architecture. I have actually been involved with a few projects in Lomita, the karate studio that the owner is here, also a commercial building that I designed on 2040 Lomita Boulevard, in which some of the developers that have invested on Narbonne hold their offices in there. So that was one of my earlier projects here. I'm really excited about this. I think this is a great opportunity. It's part of the general plan to revitalization of Narbonne, opportunity for developers that want to invest in a smaller scale. So I think this could be a great case study, pioneer project to get this going, and especially developers with limited resources. Waivers are actually designed for difficult conditions. I have one in Santa Monica that I'm designing, 9-unit, that we actually have requested waivers. I know you're talking about not having waivers. I would consider the waivers for the small properties because they're typically a result of challenges that very small properties would have. So a waiver is a request to be able to get around some of those that would, and technically with our experience with the waivers, something that would preclude the project from moving forward. That's what the waiver is for. That would financially be a hardship that would keep the developer from doing so. Just a thought on that, because I'm dealing with that as we speak. In terms of parking, I think another incentive that is typically offered is if you are within half a mile of public transportation, that tends to lighten up the requirement, and in the past, the reduction in parking, and perhaps even some bike parking, like in our case, if it made any sense to put some bike racks in the back of the building, we could even consider that, because we do have that space which is accessible from the parking lot. So that could be something that could alleviate, and that tends to offset the demand for parking as well. see. We are also wanted to take advantage of the state requirements for increase of housing that every city is going through. So it's another great opportunity to do that. We are offering affordable housing, which is great. We need more of that. And as Laura, by the way, doing an amazing job on the staff report with Brianna in putting this together. So thank you for that. Yeah, so we feel this is a great project that could start something really good for all these little beat up buildings that are outdated and need to be redone. So and last thought was, yeah, there's no way that we're going to be able to get another property to build up to 10,000 square feet. It's just not realistic, probably for us and many of the others. So I'll let the owner say a few words, and thank you for your time. You can answer any questions.
Hi, my name is Shinzo Machida. So I own the properties. It's across the street. It's at 24333 Narbonne Avenue. So here now is our like a karate studio, no downstairs. So that's coming from my father. My father's a karate master. He taught me and my brothers. So, and my brother was a partner for me like until 2 years ago, but now he moved to Florida and he like sell the business to me and continue like the legacy of my father. But this for students who have a lot of kids, a lot of adults too, like practicing martial arts, especially more karate. So, and you put like upstairs, to rent for another office, like, and you spend about more than 1.5 years try to looking for tenants, like to be there. But none of them, like, not so much people interesting. And the one person interesting is not kind of business that you would like to associate with our, like, business. So you say no, and you continue looking for another tenants, but you didn't success that. So then I talked to Luis. Luis, what do you think is you can do, like the residentials here? So and Luis start like start to make this project and like happen. I talked to Laura, Brianna, to see what's the best way, like to be in their Lomita rules. So that's is my thought. Thank you.
We can, is there any other speakers on this, Linda?
Yes.
Not yet. I want to see if there's any other speakers. I mean, for this. Okay, so we can open a public hearing now. I just didn't know about their specific project. Okay, so we'll open up the public hearing. Mr. Kivett, I guess you're going to speak?
Yeah, I had indicated that all the agenda items I wanted to speak on. This is a tough one. It really is. And I kind of vacillated in my opinion during the presentation. I'm very big on the mixed use. In fact, I was part of the General Plan Advisory Committee when it was originally advised to the council to bring the mixed use overlay in. And I am familiar with the property. I know they've been trying for an extended period. I know their broker they had been working through. I know he's put in real efforts into trying to get that office space leased upstairs, but it's a tough one. My original thought was, as just a resident and thinking about the parking concerns, to say no, that I don't like it. But after giving it a good amount of thought, I've changed my opinion on it. And I'd like, well, one thing I would like to see is that within the mixed-use overlay, and not just the downtown, there's a lot of properties under 10,000 feet, quite a few. And I would like to see mixed-use development allowed on some of those smaller properties. I know that is a separate issue possibly here, but that's something that I would like the commission staff to look at in the future. And doing assemblages, I know that on one side is the city property, on the other side, unless somebody wants to sell, unless they have an economic incentive to, and there's a lot of reasons why people may not choose to sell. Could be tax reasons, all kinds of reasons. And assemblages are tough to do. I've done a number of assemblages, including for municipal entities in the past. And unless there's some real economic incentive, they're real tough to do. And usually that incentive is higher density and increased height and for denser residential development. That's what most of them that I've put together have been. But at this point, I think I'm in favor of this item. And it's a unique one, and it may cause a little bit of additional parking issue in the area, because especially on that the neighborhoods to the west of Lomita Boulevard, of Norbon there, parking in that area is somewhat of an issue in the residential neighborhoods. I'm aware of that, but I think at this point, as a resident and just being somebody knowledgeable of the downtown and so forth, I think I'm in favor. Thank you.
Presentation. Any other comments?
I was going to just, I was thinking about the waiver, and I do feel like staff's position, although there are incentives, there are concessions, which staff again would like to reinforce, we think are enough. We don't propose any changes on adding a waiver to the ordinance. I am. I was.
Back to the commission, and we'll do one last final question for anybody. Monica, anything?
Yeah, this could be just the beginning, because they were talking about a lot of little lots in the area that are under the 10,000 square feet. So if everybody does mixed use with affordable housing involved in it, with no parking requirements, then we have an influx of parking around all the neighborhoods. And I can't see Lomita becoming a city of bicycles, really. And so it's really a hard thing to balance this, because it's going to affect a lot of areas in Lomita. It'll be affecting the parking on Narbonne, which is like 2 hours and no parking during certain times. We will probably let people park there all day in order to accommodate all the cars and with this mixed use. And it's hard to believe that there are, under the presumption that somebody's moving into a low-income dwelling, does not have a car. It's just inconceivable to me. Everybody seems to have, I don't care what kind of car, but everybody has a car. So this really is a hard one. And this is just the beginning. And that's, you know, this project is fine maybe on its own, but when you think how it could spread out, then it makes you really think of the big picture. So I'm not sure where I'm going on this yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Brenda.
I'm kind of on the same fence. I think if we do, because this is going to affect all of the properties that might want to do an upgrade, and I'm all for upgrading their properties. There's properties that need to be taken care of, and that's a whole nother issue. It's looking pretty junky on that side. But this whole, I know we suck at, excuse me, the affordable, the low income part, we're really in trouble on that one. But I don't know if this is the answer. I'm just kind of torn. So to make a blanket thing that says that it's going to encompass, you know, all the properties that want to come, and this is going to be the set standard, I don't think we won't really want to do that as a city, and just say carte blanche, this is a new standard for everything in the mixed overlay. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Already been said, thank you.
Okay, Jay? Okay, can you do me a favor and put the slide back up for those pictures of all of the units that you had proposed? Not that one, that one. Oh. One more back. The photographs. So there you go. So my comment would be echoing everybody about parking and what happens if all of these decide to do the same thing. In other words, you know, you got to look to the future, not just the one project that we have in front of us.
These projects are already developed.
I realize that, but just looking at what we have, you know, some of these are still historic looking, some of them are Spanish style, some of them are just the plain strip mall looking. So preserving the city charm, if you would, you have to see, you know, what could possibly come from this forward. And I think the parking issue is a big issue.
I have
So
sorry.
that's just my comments.
Excuse me. Of these units here, which ones don't have sufficient parking currently? I know the one on the southeast corner of Narbonne and Lomita doesn't.
So the corner of 242nd, this blue building where the thrift shop is,
That's the
that has
antique.
no parking for
Right,
either the
that's-
commercial or residential. The 3 units just going along the same row, I'm not sure how much parking they have based on their building, but it appears they have ample.
Yes.
Yeah, they have a big lot in the back.
They have a big lot in back. So
Trim
go
tart.
down to the next row, that building has no parking. It's actually very similar to this
You're
build.
talking about the one, the
event.
far, the event, yeah.
That
okay.
used to have the event business in it.
Right.
The corner of Lomita and Narbonne, none.
Right.
Right. The 4 units that are in the rear of
parking.
this, my intuition is telling me it doesn't meet standards,
Right.
our current standards. And the one adjacent, again, technically on the lot, even though the owner has some parking on a separate lot, that building does not have any parking attributed to its property. The Trim Tart building. It's
No,
not
it's
even
not
public, it's
public.
private, but it's not part of the same lot.
Pharmacy and behind the restaurants, that's right, okay.
So that's like one where the owner has voluntarily left, space for parking because of demand or appeal or what have you.
What can you tell me about the residential that's on the Lomita and Narbonne? Are those all occupied by, are those considered low income up there on those?
We have no, we don't have any information, but none of these have affordable housing deed restrictions. These were all done eons ago. The only places in Lomita that would be the Kiwanis and the Lomita Manor.
And just a few more things to add in response to some of the questions that have been brought up, is that I know there's the housing element that the city adopted last year, and the ordinance proposed as part of this actually crosses 2 of those 31 things off the list. And if you want to go back one slide to that zoning map, it's the hatched areas. So half of the light blue and maybe half of the red that you see on that map. So not in the red, just half of the blue, I apologize. I've been on vacation for 10 days. So half of the blue, that is where this would be. So we're talking a very small number of possibilities of units if we're having a maximum of 4 units, but still crossing 2 major things off of the housing element list in the eyes of the state, as well as our goals that we formed in terms of actually allowing affordable housing. And it won't solve the problem, but it does put a dent, however small it may be, in it. And so the question is, realistically on the ground, how will this be used? This is our first request.
So what you're saying is in the aqua or in the blue area, this is only effective in that area.
Half of it, the lower half.
The lower half. It's only effective in the lower half of that.
You mean the areas that are diagonally marked?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And there's no intention of bringing that farther down, Narbonne?
There is not,
Okay,
not at this time.
okay.
Okay, so it's
So with the
It's
GPAC
minimal.
going on right now, there's not going to be any changes to this? Are they going to say, okay, we can expand this for the mixed use because we need to have more mixed use? Is that a possibility?
So two things with that. Yes, we have just kicked off, as you know, the general plan update process, which is a 2 to 3 year process that starts with just the general plan amendments, and then will result in a comprehensive zoning code update where exactly things like this will be reviewed by all the powers that be. And so one thing to keep in mind is that those lots compared to these lots in the downtown district, which are, you know, historic buildings, maybe not designated historic, but smaller lots, whereas it's easier to do larger scale redevelopment and mixed use that this would not apply to. This is only for 4 units and below.
It feels like the parking impact is far outweighed by a lot of the benefits that would be created by opening up this use. I mean, we're talking a lot about the parking impact, but it feels like this checks a lot of boxes that can kind of outweigh the potential parking impact if it's minimal and limited to that amount of space. So while I understand the parking concerns, I think there are a lot of great things that this accomplishes.
Forward all the way to the bottom or the back end of it. Keep going, keep going. One more. Wait, we'll go back one. Okay. Then the last slide. Oh, last slide. That one right there. Okay. So you kids have everything before you. Seeing that we're missing 2 of our commissioners, I would like to make a motion that we postpone this until we have the full commission to review it and vote on it. That's my motion. Anybody would like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah, it would.
We closed the public hearing part, so we're just going to postpone this until we have our full commission.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was a noticed hearing, it would be preferable for staff to notice it or to continue it to a date certain so that staff doesn't have to renotice it.
I was going to ask, to be continued, don't we have to have a different direction that we're asked to go? So we'd just be presenting the same exact.
Yeah. I just want the rest of the commissioners to be involved in this vote. This is a pretty big vote.
Yeah.
And it would go to city council also.
Of course, right. But I just think we're missing 2 key people that we need to have in on this vote.
So your motion is to continue
it
the
to the next meeting. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, that's within the.
Okay. And I believe there's a second to that, correct? Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we'll just continue this to the next meeting in August. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, next item, public hearing item number 4C, which is discussion and consideration of a zoning text amendment number 2023-08, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Lomita recommending City Council approval on zoning text amendment 2023-08, which amends various sections of the Lomita Municipal Code, Title 11, Planning and Zoning, to regulate murals citywide and finding the action to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. There is a presentation by Brianna Ringe, our Community and Economic Development Director. Brianna?
Hi, yes. So as our chair mentioned at the last meeting, I presented to City Council about code enforcement issues that have been really on the rise recently, particularly graffiti, and discussed a theory called the broken windows theory I described briefly in the staff report. And I won't go into detail there, but there has been an increase in graffiti, and we are working to, staff is working as best as it can to go through the code enforcement process as required to remove graffiti from private property. However, it's the property, the onus is on the property owner to do so. And just to preface this brief presentation I have, we're only talking about private property. Public property is something Public Works would be coming forth with at a later time. But to allow, not graffiti, to allow murals on private property, we've had some requests from 3 different very close by businesses to be able to put murals up there and act as a deterrent to graffiti, because there's so many places in the city you can see the just blank white canvas walls that they're just calling for graffiti. And so the idea is to, if you have something that is more dressed up, more attractive, more whatever it might be, it is less likely to receive that graffiti. There's less that the city or the property owner is spending on mitigating those issues, and to have a better look all about the city. And so this ordinance we originally had it along with the 4 or less unit affordable housing incentives ordinance, because they were both ideas on revitalizing the downtown area. But I presented, I want to say in March, to City Council about murals and the happenings around the city, what people have been kind of asking about staff, and they said, yes, we'd like to see an ordinance that allows murals citywide. So we have bifurcated the 2 ordinances, as you saw tonight, and so this would be allowed citywide. The major important key is that every mural is required to go through you all, Planning Commission, for your review and approval. Nothing would be administrative level, it would always go to Planning Commission. You would have the ability to set conditions. Your conditions would be enforced by our code enforcement crew, and that is exactly what staff has presented to you in the draft ordinance tonight. Just Planning Commission.
Where they have to provide pictures or something like that?
So we would, should the ordinance eventually be approved by City Council, we would then establish our staff process for that. There is already some, it's allowed in one portion of the city already, but that's exactly what it would be like in a draft version, kind of like you get the plans for a project. Yeah.
And then they're required to, if there's graffiti put on it, they're required to take care of that.
So in the ordinance, we've provided provisions where Planning Commission can make specific requirements as it relates to things like insurance, maintenance, deterioration from weather, whatever it might be.
I'm going to make it funny here. Now, when they're doing construction and they have that green net, can those be murals too?
That's actually something that I worked with in another city. Whenever a city that had just a ton of development, is when they have those construction fences, we required them to have renderings so that people could get excited about the project and see what's getting there. So yes, they could do that.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
That might not be a bad idea for the future.
Yeah. Our next big project.
So those green nets attract white graffiti. Thank you.
Boy, am I aware of graffiti. I'm all over this town. Not sure if any of you know specifically where I live, but I'm on a little cul-de-sac. There's a few steps up to Eshelman, just 241st Street, just north of the park, just south of 240th. But there is a stretch of wall there that's been there forever, since the houses were built in the 50s. And I maintain that wall in the sense that if there's any graffiti put on there, I have to paint, and I get out there within hours the next morning I walk my dog every morning. Mike's seen me at the park. If there's graffiti there, I get out there and paint it. And the city used to go out there, but it'd be a mishmash of different colors, and it was ugly. But Valerie King, some of you may know Tim King used to be mayor in town. Valerie King was a neighbor adjacent there. And little Valerie was out there just painting that whole wall a nice pink color to match that pink brick. And then she moved, and I got the paint. But graffiti is a real issue. I mean, it's the ugliest thing. It defaces the city wherever it's at. And I like this idea. I really do. I think if there can be conditions put in, though my only fear is that the mural will be put up and then it's just not maintained, or there's graffiti put over it and it's not cleaned up and maintained and such. That'd be my fear. But if there could be provisions put in there that it has to be, immediately taken care of, and that there's provisions that it will be, maintained or removed, then I am very much for this. And I do like the idea that it will be subject to the Planning Commission's approval. I think you all have pretty good judgment. My one ask would be that any artwork that's put up there is rated G for general audiences. And nothing too out there, what have you, and people's opinions vary on that. But there's just something that would be family friendly in a sense for a friendly city. And I think this is something that may help alleviate a good part of this problem that we have. Thank you very much.
More comments, questions? Monica? No. Brenda? Nope. Mike?
Nope.
Jay? Somebody want to make a motion to move forward with the recommendation by staff to send it to council for approval? Okay, there's a motion. Who did, Brenda? Brenda made the motion. Somebody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Mike will second it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous pass, 5-0. Okay, very good. All righty. Next item is a presentation by Brianna again, discussion and consideration of Planning Commission bylaws. The recommendation is to present a specific direction to staff to either update the bylaws and return them to the Planning Commission with a draft resolution accordingly, or to keep them as is, if I understand it correctly. And with that being said, Brianna, can you give our presentation? Oh.
I just had a thought. Should we wait until the other two commissioners are
Well,
here?
I'm going to have her make the quick presentation, and then I was going to make that motion.
just gonna
because,
save her
again, I think
some
it's a
time.
really
I
important
don't have a
item.
presentation. It's for your discussion.
Thank you. Okay, so with that being said, any people wanting to speak on this matter? Linda, if we have nothing? George is good. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Anybody want to make a motion, or I can make a motion that we'd like to carry this over to our next meeting until we have a full commission?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is any comment? If not, I would like to call for the vote. All in favor of it? Aye.
Yay.
Aye. Okay. Passes 5-0. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see what's next. I think it's city council items, or
We did not have a meeting last week.
let me see what have I got here. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, other matters, staff announcements, I'm sorry, staff announcements.
Yeah, so tonight, you couldn't tell, but it was our intern's first presentation to Planning Commission.
Right.
So I wanted to say congrats. We got a great team here.
Very good job.
Yeah.
And I do want to welcome Whitney. Thank you.
Tomorrow is the next general plan workshop, 5:30 in the community room at the library right across the way over here, 5:30 to 7:30. It is the second of 3 this summer. And at the last one, because it came up, I did let people know that Grocery Outlet did officially submit to go in where the old Big Lots was, because there was a complaint for no grocery store. So I mentioned the Target, and I mentioned that hope, now we've solved all the city's problems, right? But the last one is that we saw several of you today. The Slip Restaurant will be opening across the street in August or so, waiting on the ABC license on their end, and so we're excited to see that come online. In addition to Cream Pan's been working with SC Edison on some issues, and that's the last stuff that they've got. So some movement in the downtown.
Any word on when the bakery is going to be opening?
That's the Cream Pan that I was
Cream
mentioning.
Pan. Did I miss that just now?
It's they're working with SC Edison.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess I missed it. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Item number 6B, Planning Commissioner items. Monica?
I think you should start at the other end sometime.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, but
Well,
anyway,
I'll do this. Jay, any items?
No, sorry.
Okay. I get hung up on one speed over another. Mike?
Clarification. At our last meeting, we passed a resolution with regard to the shopping center or the facility on PCH. And the items that were not in that resolution were going to have to be corrected. For example, one of the items was that Suite 207 was not in there, so it had to be removed. And one of the items on the plans said that the Suite 107 goes 2 stories high, and that had to be corrected. I noticed on Facebook this past weekend that Bricks and Minifigs had their grand opening, and there it is with the ceiling and the lights and all that kind of stuff. Question is, can they actually get an operation or a permit, and can they do that when there's work that has to be done there?
I appreciate that. I'm going to make note of that and look into it tomorrow. I don't have Facebook, so I haven't seen that. But I thank you for that, for letting me know. We'll get on that tomorrow morning.
Yeah, because they
Figured out.
had the grand opening, and they had people coming in. I'm not against the business. What I'm against is the fact that the owners or whoever didn't do what they were supposed to do and start removing that. I mean, and that's why I wanted clarification, and if there was something that you guys allowed them to do, or something like that. To me, and I'm not you guys, but that business should not be open until that ceiling and all that stuff is removed and everything, because that was part of the resolution.
Only the permitted units are allowed to be rented out right now and used. And that one.
Well, 107 is permitted.
Right, 207 is not permitted.
But 207 is not permitted.
Correct.
But it's not leased out. But on the plans, it said that it was open all the way up.
Yep.
And there's a ceiling in there.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do. Wanted to thank you guys. You guys did an awesome job, all of you, on your presentations, and it was really good. And I'm really excited about the Slip and Cream Pan opening and giving me my street back. But great job, guys. Thanks.
Steve. Okay, I would just like to say I think the problem with the last planning meeting is it was highly discussed what was going on PCH. So in the future, if you see something, stop us and tell us, okay, you need to do this. So we will not be illegal, and you can catch something that may slip by mistake. That would be really appreciated. And thank you, Mr. Kevitt, for bringing it up, because it makes a big difference. And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just address that very briefly. If I understand Mr. Kivett's comments, I don't think there was anything illegal that happened at the last commission. I would have said something if there was. I think what Mr. Kivett, his comment touched upon is, I think there's a concern that, number one, that the public has the ability to communicate with the commission before the commission makes up its mind. And so there's a concern, the only concern that you should be aware of is keeping an open mind until public comment, right? So obviously, it's very common for commissions to have questions of staff, and there to be a lot of back and forth between the commission and staff before they open the public hearing. That's perfectly legal, and there's no time restriction or time limit to that discussion. Obviously, the longer it goes on, if you have members in the public who are sitting in the audience, there might be a perception that maybe the commission is sort of formulating a decision before they've had a chance to comment. So that's the only thing to keep in mind as far as the public hearing from my perspective. But I just want to be really clear that nothing illegal happened at the last meeting, and I would have definitely said something if something had happened.
Did I misunderstand Mr. Kivett then?
Yeah.
What he said, I thought he said it opens this up for lawsuits and everything. And what I remember is nobody made up their mind. We were all discussing. I thought the problem was the, opening it to the public. That's what I thought was
sort of the delay.
That's up to the chair, but that's what I thought the problem was. So
Yeah.
if you could clarify me.
I think my understanding was there was a delay in opening the public hearing. There's a difference between doing something illegal and doing something that might expose the city to liability. So people sue cities all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. And again, it would be just a matter of argument to say, maybe that the public hearing should have been opened earlier. But again, there's no legal requirement that the hearing has to be opened by a certain time, and the commission always is free to ask questions before the public hearing is open, from my perspective.
At this point, no, okay.
It's up to you, Mr. Chair. This is really just sort of commissioner comments. So.
Okay. I think for the record, the minutes actually do speak quite eloquently on how everything proceeded. I don't believe there was anything that was illegal either.
Just a clarification, I thought it was the commissioner's time to express and clear it in our minds. Discussions, I don't think any of us had made up our mind. We were just trying to formulate, or at least I was, just formulate what was actually in front of us. And I didn't know we had a time limit.
There is none. There is none. So yeah, that's the only thing I can think of that Mr. Kivett might have been referring to, and I'm happy to talk to him offline to get clarification on that. I've chaired planning commissions for 15 years. I've seen other commissions go much longer before they open public hearing.
Well, it's one of those things where there was, I think, confusion. I don't want to say. Yeah, there was some confusion as to what the resolution was being proposed, and then finding out in our meeting things that weren't in that resolution, that things that were done incorrectly, that they had done that weren't in that resolution for approval. And that's part of where our discussion got crossed over, and where people, there was people, I don't want to say upset, but trying to understand exactly how this all fit together or did not fit together. And I think near the end, Brianna was very clear in saying, if it's not in the resolution, it's got to go. And that was the part that was getting kind of muddy. at least in my eyes.
Well, as I said, the minutes reflect clearly that, I mean, it says it right here. We opened up the public hearing at 7 o'clock and we listened to 1, 2, 3 people, and then we closed it at 7:09 and brought it back for discussion on our end. So I don't think anything was done illegal.
I mean, if we're not free to discuss it and get it straight, then we shouldn't be voting on it.
And there
We
was,
can't discuss it outside of this room.
right,
Exactly, that's what I mean.
right,
Well, I just brought this whole thing up, like, to settle it,
right.
not to point a finger.
No.
And look what's happened, because I thought I thought I heard the word illegal and we could be sued. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just say it's never going to happen again and done. But
So he-
evidently, that didn't work.
and he
That
said he brought it to the-
Didn't mean to point a finger, really, okay.
He said he brought it to the council's attention and left messages and nobody's gotten back to him?
That was the first I'd heard.
Because I didn't hear from, and I talked to Ryan today, he didn't mention one word to me about anything either.
It's the first I've heard of it too, but I'll follow up. And if there's
Okay.
anything we need to communicate to the commission, we'll do that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
See, Monica, we got you go last one time.
You got it, it's all typed out, you'll see it.
I mean, if I did something wrong, I'll resign right now, but I don't think I did. All right. Well, with that being said, I guess we're stuck with still having commissioners go to city council meetings. That's still,
No, you go.
August 1st and August 15th.
Steve Comer.
I might be able to make August 1st, but I
The first is
definitely-
canceled, I believe, for
Oh.
National Night Out.
Okay,
I'll be here.
okay. And the 15th, I know I won't be able to. I have other meetings, so. So Brenda, you're gonna, wait, you said August 1st is canceled?
Yeah,
It's
Clark
National Night Out.
Kathleen advised me the first one's canceled because of, oh, I think they still have to vote on it in the meeting, but we canceled last week's
Well,
meeting,
I'll
so
make
they'll
a
vote
note,
next week.
Brenda, and who's going to the 15th? Mike said he's going? Okay,
No?
I have you down. Okay, if there's nothing else, I would call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn is 7:40, is that about right? Does that sound right?
38.
7:38. Motion to adjourn, 7:38. Second? Second to adjourn? Thank you. Okay, all in favor, aye? Aye. Okay, adjourn at 7:38.